In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a floor pouf. Later on, I make this an eco-friendly project and I'll show you how. I'm Katie, a modern quilter, and I love all things sewing related. So today, we're going to go ahead and sew a pattern of mine, which is going to be a floor pouf. I've been swimming in loads of, scraps from projects that no longer are the size that I can use, as well as just a bunch of stuff from my family that has either worn holes in, jeans, things that are maybe to the point that could be mended, but let's be honest, I don't like mending things. I don't think many of us sewists do. So instead of getting them into the landfill and throwing them out, I'm gonna go ahead and repurpose them and use them for this floor pouf, which is perfect. I actually had this Merriweather canvas in my stash. I have two pieces of it. In the pattern, you'll see you need a yard and a half. I had two pieces of it, enough to cut out the templates and everything for this project. It's no longer in print, but it's Merriweather from Birch Organics by Arlene Hillier. And it's durable enough that I think it's gonna be great for hiding a lot of dirt with all the pattern, as well as the mustard or the marigold color. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. First off, in your pattern, whether you get this through PDF download, a digital download, or if you order it through my shop and get the paper pattern, you'll get the templates for cutting out the proper amount of fabric and all that stuff for your floor pouf. So I'm going to go ahead and use my templates. This is a lot wider fabric than your typical 40 to 45 inch quilting cotton. So what I'm going to do to preserve a little bit of the fabric is go ahead and I'm going to refold this just so it's big enough. I'm going to kind of tuck this here so I don't have it blowing away in the wind. So essentially I'm going to be saving some of the canvas by making my fold a new fold in the canvas. So that way you can see I'm not wasting so much fabric, and maybe I can use it for another bag or a pouch of some sort for a project down the road. So now that I have this one ready, and you can see I've got my quilting or my cutting mat underneath, we're going to go ahead and cut 6 of these out, and I will also be cutting the same amount out of the batting. This is a great time if you have fusible batting to go ahead and use that. I'm just going to be using everything that I have in my stash. Right now I don't have any fusible batting, which you get from Quilter's Dream batting. They've got a nice kind of hobby style fusible where you just iron it on and it works great. I'm going to go ahead and use some batting scraps with some tacky spray, or you can use basting spray, and then that way it'll be sticking right to your project. The main thing with the batting is going to be that it's meant to smooth out the silhouette of your floor pouf at the very end of it. So once it's all stuffed, you're not going to have bulkiness sticking out. It'll be nice and smooth out with that batting. All right. I'm going to go ahead and use a water-soluble friction pen from Pilot. They're handy, and and to be honest, this is going to be captured in the seam, so I'm not too worried. I know there's concerns out there in the world that friction pens, marking of any sort, is going to leave behind some sort of mark, but once it's captured in the seams, doesn't really matter if it shows a mark. You're not going to be able to see it anyways, right? And this is a great time to just give you a little tip. When I was actually at a sewing retreat for garment making, I found out using, which I've got right here, giant washers. So using giant washers from the hardware store, they don't have to be anything special, will help you keep your templates in place, and that way you can be more focused on drawing your lines rather than trying to keep your template from shifting around. Go ahead right now and cut out. We need to get 3 of these circles cut out for the bottom and the top. All right, and like I said, I'm just going to be using a bunch of batting scraps I have from cutoffs of quilts I've made in the past, rather than the fusible batting that's called out. So really, I just have a pile of my scraps, and I'm going to go ahead and just cut another 6 of those templates out, along with, I want to say, where'd that circle go? 3 from the batting. So, all right, now that we have our 6 of each, batting and our Ottoman panels, then we'll go ahead and I've set these off to the side, the circles for now. We're just going to focus on these. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I know this is not basting spray, but it's going to do the trick, and it's what I have on hand. I'm going to go ahead and spray adhere my batting panels onto the Ottoman panels. If they're a little bit smaller, that's a-okay, because really we're going to be using a little bit thicker seam allowance to ensure that we catch both the batting and the panels. So essentially, when we start sewing the panels together, you'll be having 4 pieces of fabric, 2 batting, 2 fabric, that you'll be sewing through your machine. So making sure you have a heavier duty needle is going to be clutch, as well as tightening up your stitch allowance. I think I'm going to drop mine down to, might as well do it now before I forget. I'm going to drop mine down to 1.8. I'd say at the high end, have it at 2.0. And then that way you just really make sure you grab the threads within your fabric, especially this being a floor pouf, something you're going to be kicking your feet on. My kids love to use it as like a medicine ball and throw it around. I don't know what they're doing, but to be honest, you might as well just make sure that the seams are going to be durable, so that way there's no concern about it. The last thing you want is to have all of your your stuffing blowing out in the living room, right? So I'm going to go ahead and adhere these on there and go from there. As I mentioned, we're going to want to reduce our stitch length down to 1.8, as well as I'm going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance for these panels, as well as the next portion once we get to it. And it's very crucial when we start and we end these panels is to backstitch, just to make sure that we don't have any loosening seams, especially, once again, this needing to be a sturdy item in your home or to gift or whatever you're going to do with it. You're going to want to make sure that those seams don't start coming apart. And from there, we're just going to go ahead and cut about every 1/2 inch. Don't cut into your seam, but this, just little snips will allow for that curve to actually show when we start stuffing the floor pouf. So now we're going to go ahead and work on our circles, which are going to be the bottom and the top of the floor pouf. All right. So the first one we're going to do is go ahead, grab your tacky spray, and or if you want to, you can just pin baste it. You could use the fusible batting, but we're going to go ahead and attach one of our batting circles to the wrong side of the fabric circle. So I'm going to go ahead, just spray this quick. Oh, shooting off to the side now. That's cool. And there you have it. All right. And then these ones, we're not going to put any batting circles in there. You know, we have 2 batting circles that are left over. We're going to go ahead and just sew these wrong sides together, or right sides together, my apologies. And then we're going to go ahead and flip it out, use a point turner, and go ahead, iron it, and then do a top stitch to really give it a nice professional finish. And this will be our top piece of the floor pouf. All right, so we are going to pick one or the other side. Doesn't matter unless you have directional fabric that you're wanting to pay attention to. This is very non-directional fabric, so I'm just going to go ahead. I do have some excess batting here on the outside or the very edges of my floor pouf. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is trim that off so I can better see and get a more accurate seam allowance while I attach this bottom of the floor pouf. So the big thing we're going to do right now is go ahead, I'm going to fold this in half and make sure this, even the batting on this one's a little bit big. I do have some pins over here. I'm going to go ahead, and when I fold it in half, I'm then going to pin. Essentially think about it as a clock. You're going to pin it so that way you know where 12, 3, and 6 o'clock are. So that way when we connect it to the beach ball here, you're going to have, so now I'm matching the 2 pins up because I know that's the halfway point. And then that way when you are going ahead and pinning this to the bottom of your floor pouf, you know it's going to be accurately placed and evenly placed, right, between all the quadrants. So on here we do have 6 seams. So essentially you can take 2 of your seams. That's your, think about it as your 9 and 3. I'm going to start and just push this on the inside, and with those 4 pins I've used, I'm going to go ahead, actually, you know what? since I know that's 9 and 3, I'm going to go ahead and grab the 2 panels and then match 9 and 3 up, those 2 seams. And then I'll do a couple of pins so I know where 12 and 6 are, if that makes sense, hopefully. So there we know, that's the center of the panel there. I'm just going to go ahead and place a pin so I know. Perfect. Back to making sure those seams, that 9 and 3 seam is together, and then pinching over here and doing the same thing. There we go. So now, just like we have on the circle, we know our 12, 3, 6, and 9, and then we're going to line up with right sides together. Going to line up your pins, and then go ahead and you can either pin or clip it in place, whatever's easiest for you. The big thing is when I'm sewing this is one thing that is very helpful, is I'm going to keep the panel, I'm going to keep the base, the circle, on my base plate because that's flat, and then that way I can visually see how the rest of the floor pouf is easing in to that seam. So I'm going to go slow and steady, sewing with circles. It's not tricky, it just takes a lot of practice and it takes patience. Okay, so once again, now I'm lining up 6 o'clock, and I'm going to go ahead, place the pin in there. Now from here, you're just going to want to take your time, and whether you have wonder clips or any type of clip or pins, you're just going to want to kind of pin the living crap out of it. I like to go between 2 of your already placed pins, so either this one I'm doing 9 and 6, and then find the center point of that, and then add another pin between there. So essentially between each quadrant, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 pins on top of the original 4. 1/2 inch seam allowance to really make sure I grab it. I'm still on a less setting or a lower setting. Stitch length 1.8 is what I've chosen, and then I'm just going to go ahead and start slowly sewing. Okay, back stitch is important here. All right, now we have our deflated beach ball here, and we have the circles. Don't forget about that. Don't lose those. We're going to go ahead and stuff them. You may be wondering, or stuff the floor pouf. You may be wondering, what should I use to stuff the floor pouf? Well, I gotta say, I have loads of kind of offcuts from long arm quilting, as well as kids' clothes, which has kind of a rip here. I've got 2 of these massive bags. One, the textile industry already has a ton of waste, right? We know that. If you don't know that, it does. And I really hate throwing stuff into a landfill when it can have a second purpose in life. So what I always like to do is, one, whenever you can, in the base of your floor pouf, I really recommend using jeans, maybe some old tennis shoes that are worn out, wash them first. All this stuff is always clean before I put it in there, so we're not having some weird smell coming out of there. But that way it gives you a nice weight to it. So even if you were to like accidentally knock into the floor pouf, or it were to get rolled around, it always tries to come back to that natural resting place because it's got that weight to it. So I'm going to go ahead and do is I see I've got a chunk of clothes that are to not be mended. I have 2 kids. They burn through their clothes, like literally holes in the knees, holes through everything, and no one else can really get a use out of it again. So I usually put those in there first. My husband's jeans that he puts holes in, those are fantastic things to really fill the core of your floor pouf up with. And then I like to fill in with like the really small scraps from quilting into the outer portion of the floor pouf. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is grab those batting pieces you have. I'm just going to layer it. You can see it's a bit smaller than your hole, which is perfect. That way it just kind of keeps everything tucked into place. And then you're going to go ahead and layer that first circle we created on top. Going ahead, and I'm just going to do a whip stitch all the way around, a little bit narrower, maybe about less than 1/8 inch. And what I like to do is catch that stay stitch that we put around the perimeter hole. So make sure you grab outside of that, and then grab within that first seam that we put on this top circle. And then that way, not only are you grabbing the fabric, but you're also grabbing that stitch, which will hopefully reinforce and make sure it's a really sturdy hand stitching that you're putting into your floor proof. There you have it. I've got the full floor proof completed, and I'll see you in the next video where I show you the ins and outs of applique with a modern twist.